All right, everybody. Wednesday, February 5th. I was not expecting to be behind a microphone this quickly after just speaking with Coach Moore, which was great. You should check it out. Went out yesterday. I am joined here with Sam, Jesse, and Pete B. Wearing a hat with a smiley face. Remember, everybody to smile. But we did get hit with some news, which causes for the emergency podcast, press conference, whatever you want to call it. So here's the news. Ohio State is replacing Justin Fry, who did recruit me to Boston College. Loved Justin Fry, with Tyler Bowen, Virginia Tech's current offensive coordinator. I loved this breakdown that came from David Cunningham. He posted a domino effect that we did see go down. So Jerry Jones hires Brian Schottenheimer as the Cowboys offensive or the head coach. Schottenheimer hires Cardinals offensive line coach Clayton Adams as the Cowboys OC. Arizona replaces Adams with Justin Fry from Ohio State. And then Ohio State replaces Justin Fry with Tyler Bowen. Whole lot of information. TLDR, offensive coordinator. We are on the market. Virginia Tech needs an offensive coordinator. We're going to go for gut reactions real quick. Sam, Jesse, you are first.
I mean, y'all wanted coordinator changes. Here you go. Right? Like this is, it's not the, I would say it's not the conventional way to get there, but this is the fresh start that I think a lot of people thought Virginia Tech football needed from an assistant coaching perspective. However, you can spin this whichever way you want. Like this could be doomsday scenario and it could be, oh, happy day rejoicing. I think it is, it's weird. And I think it's a difficult position. But I also think no matter how you slice it, it is an opportunity for this program to make a step up on the offensive coaching side of the ball. It is an opportunity to do that because your quarterback's coach just left to be an offensive line coach. So at minimum,
that's the thing, right? It's surprising, Sam. Like I'm very surprised when you see that he's not only going to Ohio State, but he's coaching a position that he hasn't coached since 2017 at Maryland. 2017. I mean, Josh Jackson led us to a win over West Virginia in 2017. That's a long time ago.
Our last Power 5 out of conference win.
We don't need that right now, Billy Ray. We don't need that right now.
So real quick, and I do think that this is worth mentioning. Justin Fry last year made $1 million as the offensive line coach at Ohio State. Tyler Bowen made $875,000 last year. Now, it is a difficult pill to swallow, regardless of how you view, would I do that? Would I not do that? The thing that is frustrating is that a sitting offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, maybe more pertinently in the ACC, has left for a coordinator job or a position coach job in the Big Ten. Which is a difficult pill to swallow. And Virginia Tech, I can't really remember the last time we've been in this position, at least from a coordinator perspective. From a positional perspective, Aaron Moorhead, who we'll talk about in a little bit, he took the job. He went to Texas A&M, I believe, and then you saw Coach Wiggins. He went to Alabama from the wide receiver room. But Pete, just want to get your instant gut reaction to the news today.
Well, I'm not too upset about it. I understand you're losing the coach, what people want to call late in the cycle. We hired our DC last week. Mm-hmm. It's not, yes, it's late in the cycle from learning about we're going to be changing, but it's not so late to be hiring a new coach. There were tons of coaches that just got hired last week, as you just went through. And so for me, like, have we been good the last 3 years with these two coordinator hires that Pry initially made? Two young guys coming in who were largely unproven? No. So now that he's walking out the door, I'm not too upset about it. There are other factors like the recruiting, and we can talk about all those things. But right off the bat, and I see the news, and I'm like Sam said, opportunity, man. Like this is an absolute opportunity to upgrade at offensive coordinator, in my personal opinion. Not only that, but he was our QB coach with no quarterback coach experience before last year. And so you get to get a real QB coach too, if you want one. That, to me, those are exciting opportunities.
So the two things that really worry me, I agree with you 100% on the opportunity. The timing of the opportunity presenting itself is tough. And the reason that I say that, I put out, I know we're not talking about candidates yet, but I put out a picture of Aaron Moorhead. Aaron Moorhead recruited Isaiah Ford, recruited Cam Phillips, went to Texas A&M. He is the current wide receiver coach for Pete B's Philadelphia Eagles right now.
Pretty good wide receivers on that team.
Pretty damn good wide receivers on that team. But the problem, I got a reply and somebody said, are we really going to go down the road of a first-time offensive coordinator? I would be shocked if we are able to find somebody to step in this role with play calling experience that has a job right now, especially at the Power 5 level. That is my first concern. My second concern, this was already a big date on the calendar that a lot of people have had circled, April 16th to April 2025 to April 25th. Sorry, I'm stumbling over myself here. The 16th to the 25th is the second transfer portal window for the NCAA for football. This is where teams are going to be, there's going to be a lot of movement, and you're hoping to minimize that and supplement a couple of positions. That date is now much more intimidating in this position to me than it was 3 hours ago. So those are my two biggest concerns. Are you able to find a candidate that puts you in a better position than Tyler Bowen? And look, I just want to say this. I do feel like Tyler Bowen, there are things to be frustrated about, and then there are other things that I can point to and say there were times where he got results where we had glaring issues on the roster, whether it be offensive line play, whether it be health at the quarterback position, whether it be consistency from the wide receiver position. I'm not saying this guy's Kyle Shanahan, but I am saying that I don't feel confident saying like that he was awful, and I don't feel confident saying that he was great. I think it's kind of right in between those two pillars.
Yeah, there was a definite ceiling, right? But at the same time, I think, given the issues at quarterback with the injuries, given your best offensive player in Bashal Tootin dealt with injuries the whole second half of the year, and based on the fact they didn't really have a good offensive line either year, the fact Virginia Tech was able to score enough points to win games was a testament to him. And it's probably why he ended up getting that Ohio State job. They probably saw some of that. But I would also say, this is an offense that didn't really improve year over year, I don't think. I wanted to do a whole breakdown of, hey, here's the 23 offense versus the 24 offense. Here are scheme changes, statistical breakdowns, stuff like that. I really didn't have any content to work off of for that. I mean, it was the same run pass split. It was a lot of the same results. It was a lot of the same errors. And so from a aspect of like, are we losing a good offensive coordinator or not? Look, I think you're losing the guy that exactly is who you saw. Like, I don't think Virginia Tech's offense would have been markedly better next year under any circumstance. But at the same time, Billy Ray, I think you're absolutely correct where the timing of this is very, very difficult. And the first and foremost, you got to make sure you keep, your core guys in the boat. I think that is option number one. I mean, Brent Pry, the dude he's going to be on the phone every single minute of every single day for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And it's either going to be calling recruits, calling his current players, calling potential candidates, because you have to keep this thing together. Like, I think that's the biggest danger right now. I mean, we know they've already called people about this opening. They've already made inroads and they want to move quickly with it. I believe Andy Bitter said that his source told him that they wanted to move very quickly with this. Don't think they really have an option.
Good scoop.
So, great scoop there, Andy. Yeah, I mean, you got to figure this out, and you got to figure it out. I mean, you have a matter of weeks. Like, I think by the end of February, you absolutely 100% need that guy hired.
Can we take one step back to him going to OSU for this position of offensive line? What's been the worst position at Virginia Tech over the last 3 years?
That would be the offensive line.
Offensive line. And Bowen, while not the offensive line coach, was just hired as the national champs offensive line coach when he's had the worst position on Virginia Tech's team at his disposal. I'm not saying he was coaching them day in and day out, but you would think if he's an O-line coach and he's got some expertise there, that our offensive line would have been a little bit better. Well, guess what? It wasn't. I don't think Virginia Tech will be materially worse by Tyler Bowen leaving. Not at all. I don't think it costs us a win on whatever total it's going to be next year. In fact, it may go the other way, which we can expand on. Recruiting wise, we know Tyler Bowen was well liked. We know that. You watch signing day, there's rapports with multiple of the coaches and the players' parents on the video and everything. The Irmo head coach loved Tyler Bowen. A lot of people, Pride loved him. It was one of my fears is that Pride liked him so much that we might have another Cornelsen situation here. And this takes that off the table, which I am relieved about, to be quite honest. And I just, like Sam said, the ceiling had already been hit. I mean, we were, that's not really fair because maybe Matt Moore comes in, the O-line gets better, and then the offense gets better. Kyron takes a step forward, all that stuff. But we went backwards in offense this past year. We all saw it. And I know people are going to point to the injury of Kyron, and all I can go off of is what happened. And we were 50th in yards per play 2 years ago and 71st this past year. In Tyler Bowen's first year as offensive coordinator, it was one of the worst power offenses of all time. We were in the mid one teens in every offensive category. He has not been good at Virginia Tech. Let's just, you want to go by any metric, he has not been a good offensive coordinator. So I am not going to cry into my cereal bowl about losing what he could put on the field. Recruiting wise, maybe.
Yeah,
But,
that's my biggest fear though, is like if this had happened 2 months ago, right? It's a very different conversation because when the boiling point got so hot, when people were saying, I want new coordinators on both sides of the ball, you're viewing that as, okay, we have some time to identify somebody who's going to be a great fit. And now you're operating from a much smaller pool of who's available and who wants to take these jobs. And we're going to get into this a little bit more.
And that's fair. That is very fair.
We're going to get into this a little bit more too. But some of the names that we're throwing out, like Neil Brown, I'll just throw him out there. Great relationship with our current offensive line coach. The fact is, on paper, he'd be a great hire. He's getting paid $9.5 million from West Virginia over 80 weeks in biweekly payments. So you're going to need to convince him to come coach again, stop taking the buyout money that I don't know what the specifics of the contract are, but he's essentially getting paid $9.5 million over the next 80 weeks to do zero. And come into a situation that there's not really a way to sugarcoat this. Virginia Tech is not a very attractive job for assistant coaches right now. We're very much in a prove it situation with this head coach. And I want this season to go great. But if you're looking at this unbiasedly, it's kind of a hard sell to this late in the cycle, go find somebody with play calling experience. That is a highly sought after offensive coordinator this late in the cycle. So the timing, to me, Pete, I agree with you. Like on paper, if I was to say, hey, from a play calling perspective and a schematical perspective, does this hurt the bottom line of Virginia Tech? To be determined, probably not that much. But the timing of it, from the transfer portal being available and who you're choosing from to replace him, I think it is at least cause for concern.
Yeah, I mean, the definite vibe around the program in terms of the assistant coach game, right? And we saw this with the defensive coordinator head coaching job. And also, I think you can see it as well with the way that Sam Sefkis's contract is. I think there's a sentiment of, hey, we don't really know if this thing will be around in 2+ years, right? Like, I don't think they're signing anybody to a 5-year contract. I don't think anybody's going to sign on for that. 1-2 years, yeah, people are going to sign on for that, but long term, no. So I think regardless of whoever you go after and get, you're going after them and saying, hey, we got to figure this thing out in the next 365 days or we're all gone. And
I do just want to say this before we get to the 15-minute mark. Like, it's so hard to do this because this isn't like a Luka trade where this would almost be like you're doing a Luka podcast where they say, hey, Luka's leaving the Mavs. And then you just talk about a bunch of stuff until you figure out what happens. I'm not ruling judgment on we're going to end up with somebody with no experience. Like he ultimately has to go out and make the hire, and I don't know who it's going to be. And maybe we're thrilled with who it is. These are just the challenges of the unknown that he's facing while he's on all of these phone calls. I'm sorry.
There are a lot of unknowns for sure. And I just think when you have, and we were talking a little bit about this before we started, we have $1 million plus to offer someone. If Neil Brown loves ball, he would probably come in and offset, the 9.5 with his 1 million and be fine. Some guys don't, like Justin Fuente. We haven't seen him coach again. Guy doesn't love ball. Neil Brown might.
All right.
Other guys might. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to view. I know it's a tough situation, but our locker room is not devoid of talent. Like, you could come in with Matt Moore if the new OC has any kind of relationship with Matt Moore or it can work with him. I don't see why our offense couldn't step up from what we did last year, because there were a lot of shortcomings. Finding the guy is a challenge, but like us three talking about who the candidates are, which we can have some fun with candidates. Yeah. But Seifkis never came up in the DC mentions, like there are a million guys out there that you could go hire and could potentially be amazing. Like it may be drinking the Kool-Aid, but like how much better do we feel about Seifkis today than we did when we first heard the name? Like the guy seems pretty bright and it could work out, but implementing a new scheme, the timing of the hire, and what it says about where tech is, I do agree, Bill. Like there are some concerns here. And let me just ask that real quick before we move back to like the hire and everything. Do you think that this Bowen leaving makes us look like a mess, makes it look like it's a sinking ship?
Nationally, no, it's Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State and Texas and Georgia have done this multiple times over the past few years. So I don't see. I wanted
to ask the question at the very least. I agree, Sam. Like he's going to the national champ, and yes, it's a step back in title, but probably not money, right?
For sure,
I think
money.
The way that I look at this is, Sam, you're 100% right. If you're a casual follower of college football, you're saying, oh, okay, Ohio State just brought in a current sitting offensive coordinator who has coached in the NFL, and he's a good recruiter. If you are in the ACC, or you are more specifically a Virginia Tech fan, it is, I don't want to say status quo, but it aligns with some of the bad storylines that have come out over the last 90 days. So I think Virginia Tech fans we've been, what's the word I'm looking for? Treading water in kind of a situation where we're filled with negativity. So obviously you're going to be in this void of darkness. But from a national scale, I don't think people are pointing and laughing at Virginia Tech. They're saying Ohio State just went out and got an offensive coordinator to go coach a position group, and they're going to pay him a ton of money.
If he was going to BC to be their offensive line coach, then we'd be like, okay, something stinks here. Like this isn't good. But that's not what he's doing. And especially since they just won it all, it makes it a lot easier. And when your guys get poached, like typically that's means you're doing something right. Typically.
Yeah. This is an unanswerable question. And I know we're going to do unanswerable questions at the end of this podcast. And I'm never one to disparage ever. Like, people leave jobs and do stuff all the time. It is a bummer. And maybe that is just the word to use for it, a bummer. Like Coach Pry gave this guy an opportunity to be an offensive coordinator here, come over from the NFL, a step up, most would argue, to come be an offensive coordinator here. And, no matter how you slice it, it does put a big fat challenge on Coach Pry's plate. And quite frankly, probably the first, if you look at it unbiasedly, somewhat negative headline of the offseason in Coach Pry's tenure. I know we had an issue a couple of weeks ago, but it's peculiar because Virginia Tech fans for the last 3 years have really enjoyed January to right before September starts.
Well, it reminds me of the Joe Rudolph situation, right?
Yes.
People did freak out when that happened because he had a stellar reputation that we were hoping to capitalize on. This is different in a few different ways, but it does remind me of that.
One more challenge that's just part of the math here is, and obviously this is the same thing for Seifkis, but if you're looking to replace here, you're basically saying, hey, we want you to come be an offensive coordinator. I know it's late. By the way, we just hired our offensive line coach. Our wide receiver coach is the associate head coach. So you're not really coming in here and bringing your guys. You're really just coming in here, meeting the guys, and then calling the plays. Probably. Now,
That's
I
a
don't
good
know
point,
if,
man. That's a good point.
I don't know if there'll be more departures from the offensive side of the ball. I know there are rumors flying around about it, but when we were going through this defensive coordinator change, that was one of the challenges that I saw is like, you're looking for a defensive coordinator to step into a position where it's already a little bit of a tumultuous situation. And also you're going to have to figure out how to work with the guys that are already here. And you're looking at that exact same situation now at offensive coordinator. So the more I talk about it, the timing,
the timing sucks. And I think you have an offense where like you're returning your starting quarterback in Kyron Drones. But outside of that, everything is new. And all of these players signed on to play for Tyler Bowen.
Especially KD, which is something we should talk about.
Yeah, I mean, and you're also looking at, well, I wouldn't say with that. I'd say the offensive line is more attached to Matt Moore right now, but you have built a roster right now that could, at the snap of a finger, go away. Like there is not a lot keeping some of the guys on this roster for going elsewhere. A lot of these wide receiver recruits, some of these talented tight ends, some of these talented running backs that they've stacked up, they could go somewhere else. So I think that is your number one fear. But I would also say, I think Virginia Tech is in the same vein, very attractive if they can keep those guys, because there's a lot of young talent and they've done a very good job of building up the skill position groups with really talented freshmen and sophomores. I think that is a bit of an X factor that would go into hiring a coach, because you're going in and saying, hey, guess what? You want to run a pass happy offense? We're returning our quarterback and we've recruited wide receiver, the best out of any position. Oh, we also have a offensive line coach that's putting two straight seasons, putting a dude in the top, 2-3 rounds of the NFL draft in back-to-back years. Like there are selling points for it. And I don't know if from our angle, we're going into it and saying, hey, whoever they hire has a year. And if you don't perform, it's all blown up after that. I don't think Brent Pry is going into an interview with that. I don't think I think he's going to say something like, hey,
he's not thinking about the fact that he only has 1 year left. He knows the pressure's on, but I'm not even sure. No one knows for sure whether he's got 1 year left or not, but a lot of the fans do feel that way. I would say on the team retention thing, it being gone in the blink of an eye or whatever, Sam, who has been better at retaining guys than Brent Pry? I mean, we brought everybody back for last year. We didn't have a DC for 46 days, and we kept everybody and kept adding portal guys.
Yeah. So the only guys in a new safety room.
And the only guys
I'm not worried about retaining these guys. We're going to bring in an OC. We've got the portal's not open, which is best case scenario because you prevent the kids from panicking and jumping in. Cool. They have to wait until we have a new OC who can meet with them, describe the scheme, meet with their positions, whatever it is. All of that saves us a little bit. I know the timing's not good, but it can honestly be worse. It really could be. Well, like I said, so many guys just were on the move. Most of them from playoff schools, but a lot of guys were just on the move all over the country. There are plenty of candidates who would be willing to take $1 million to call the offense of a talented roster like Virginia Tech. That's what I feel like.
Do you think, and this is again, unanswerable question, but
I love those.
Yeah. I mean, Tech has some money to work with here. For fans listening and who maybe aren't as totally plugged in as we are. And if you aren't, congratulations, because shit's crazy. Virginia Tech is not some poverty school when it comes to assistant coach salaries. They haven't been paying as much because they haven't had to, because of the guys that they've hired haven't demanded that much. Pete, we talked about it all offseason. We thought the DC hire would be somewhere between 1.5. We got him for $875K, right? So you have a good amount of money to deal with here for your offensive coordinator hire. Oh yeah, and also I think you get like what $100,000 buyout for Bowen or something
At
like
least
that.
50.
At least 50. You get some chunk of change here. You're not losing money on Bowen leaving.
Yeah.
Well, at least it might cancel out Marv's loss. Like there's something in there a little bit.
Right. And so you'll see. But my point is you have a good amount you have a bag here to drop. And I want that to be one of the takeaways from this for fans listening is it's not like Virginia Tech doesn't have the ability to go out here and get a big time name hire just because they didn't do that necessarily with DC. DC was a little bit of a money ball play there, but
it depends on what your definition of look, at the end of the day, I truly don't care about big name or cachet or anything. I'm more so ultimately what I care about is can the guy come in and coach ball? And you're not going to be able to answer that question until we get to September, October, November. But where I'm looking at this is when everybody was saying, and I'm not saying you make decisions off of what the fan base says. If we did that, probably be in a pretty bad position, myself included. What I'm saying is the expectation in mid to late November is I hope we move on from one or two of our coordinators and bring in somebody with more experience, because what everybody was pointing to was where the lack of experience. It is going to be challenging to find somebody that meets the criteria that the fan base is looking for. Sifkes can come in here and be an absolute stud. And that's why I'm not coming out here and saying I'm disappointed by the hire or I'm super fired up about the hire. There have been a bunch of people who have said a lot of nice things about him. He's got a really impressive resume. He wasn't on anybody's list, and we're going to see what it looks like. But from what people were hoping for to what we're ultimately going to end up with in both of the guys wearing the headsets calling the plays for offense and defense, there is a delta between that. I think we can all agree that that's likely going to be the case.
It's funny because we've been one of the youngest pairs of coordinators in power football, probably in all of FBS, if we're being honest. And if we hire another 33-year-old at OC, we're still going to be super young, but we may feel a lot better about the guys. I mean, we all talked ourselves into Bowen and Marv when they were hired. But they were upside hires. We knew that they were young guys who we thought were hired for recruiting, that hopefully they know how to scheme them up. With Marv, they decided that wasn't going to be the case, and the recruiting might have not been there. With Bowen, the recruiting did seem to be there. The scheme, we'll just call it TBD. I'll leave it at that one.
And I think,
but I thought both of them should have been gone at the end of the season because I thought the team underperformed so badly. I thought we needed new strength and conditioning, new coordinators, and we got a new O-line coach, which I think that's great too. But that's not even what I was calling for. But we needed enough change to say I believe this will be different next year. And right now we've got all that change.
And this is going to come off soapboxy, and I hope it lands the right way. I've said this since day one. Coach Pry has everything you want from a figurehead speaking behind a microphone person. His relationships with the coaches, relationship with the players, relationship with the school, that is all tangible and are really important. Virginia Tech, the way that they recruit, the conference that we're in, the way that we won in the past, you absolutely have to be in a difference maker position in the weight room, and you absolutely have to be at a difference maker perspective. You're not just going to go out there, run a vanilla offense, run a vanilla defense, and your guys are just going to be better than all the teams we play. That's never been the case. That will never be the case at Virginia Tech. So I hope that we are going to be in a position, and I feel confident. Look, talking to Coach Moore, loved talking to Coach Moore. That's a guy who knows football, has been around some great minds. I'm very excited to have him in the room. Coach Ferguson, I learned from him. I lifted with him from a culture perspective and everything. That's what you want in that room. I hope that with this coordinator change, we have to be in a position of innovation and have to be in a position of maximizing the talent in the room. And the obvious glaring fact is on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, we did not maximize our talent. That's not really even debatable. So that is something that has to be fixed. And honestly, when this name comes out, unless it's probably one name that I'm going to throw out there as a candidate, people are probably going to be negative about it. And ultimately, we're not going to know until we put the ball down. And that's just kind of the way that it is. So I hate to say that on a podcast where people are looking for answers, or maybe somebody hopped on here and just were looking for fear porn, but that's ultimately what it's going to be.
I think the goal of the podcast is to talk it out. That's what I mean. I think a lot of people are having all these thoughts, and they want to hear us have the thoughts, and maybe we say something that they didn't think of. Not to necessarily give answers, because
there are none.
We don't.
There are none.
We don't have the insider
information. No one has been hired yet.
No,
Right. And
no
honestly,
wiretaps.
No one saw the Cephas thing coming either, and so there's been a lot of curveballs thrown Hokie Nation's way. I'm curious for you guys, can we talk quickly? Just that we did we'll go back to the candidates in a second. Mm-hmm. Briefly, we did make a hire in the strength and conditioning room in addition to Coach Ferguson. We brought in Mason Baggett, who I personally know from college. We started together, been on bachelor parties with Mason. Great guy, super strong. He was a walk-on offensive lineman at Tech and won a bunch of Iron Hokie awards while he was there. Been all over the country working. He worked for Maryland, Oregon, Lovie Smith at Illinois, Nevada more recently. So he's been around the block, done a lot of things, and he's about my age. I think he's exactly my age. Cool dude, and I'm pumped that he's coming back to Blacksburg. And I wanted to get that out there. So welcome, Mason, back to the Berg, man. We're happy to have you.
Pete, that was a great breakdown. I kind of just go over some really important boxes to check here for strength and conditioning coach. Super strong, check. Parties, check. And cool dude.
Hey, man,
I'm there. That's it. Those are my
that meets Brett's requirements too.
I mean that's what you want. And I think
I was trying to get the more serious stuff. Like, he's worked a bunch of places and he's put his time in, he's grinded. The
reception,
I'm happy to get him
really good from that. And I think, like, Billy Ray, you're absolutely 100% right. And shout out to Chris Coleman on this one too. Virginia Tech needs to absolutely crush the weight room. There is no question. I think you look at what some programs across the country have done that are similar to Virginia Tech. Like Iowa State absolutely dominates the weight room. Kansas State absolutely dominates it. I think you look, Utah, that's where their X factor is as a program is our guys are going to be better conditioned and stronger than your guys. Virginia Tech has not been there in quite some time. And I think a lot of these, players aren't playing up to their abilities. Our scheme isn't great. Our game plan doesn't look great. Sometimes the guy on the other side of the ball is just bigger, faster, stronger. And you can't really do anything about that. And Virginia Tech needs to get to a point, no matter what happens schematically, like that needs to be a win. I think, can we, go ahead and talk about some potential candidates right off the bat? Because, they're going to have to make this hire here. Every minute that passes is a minute that they don't have an offense coordinator.
Disclaimer. If we were doing Vegas odds, the odds that it's somebody that isn't on this list would be like minus 2,800. So we're going to say a bunch of names and we're going to throw like a party if we nail it, but it's probably not going to be some of these names. I think let's just go round robin. Let's do one each, because I'm sure we're going to have some crossover here. I'll just go number one. If I could have anybody, I'd love to have Neil Brown. Neil Brown, familiarity with Matt Moore. He played for Mike Leach at Kentucky prior to transferring to UMass. Had some really solid offenses at West Virginia. It was a stark change from what they did at West Virginia previously, where they aired it out. Very, very good run game. And ultimately, you're bringing in somebody who has experience in play calling, has experience as a head coach. And I can't see past this $9.5 million owed from West Virginia.
You just don't think he's going to be jumping back in.
I think that he's probably in a position to where, and I hate that this is the reality, but all of these coaches that are in that position are probably waiting for an SEC or Big Ten job to open up, and not necessarily a head coaching job, but a coordinator job. Like, that's ultimately what probably a lot of these coaches are looking at.
I know Neil Brown is he was well thought of. Obviously, he got the head coaching job at West Virginia, but his offenses there weren't amazing, and his offenses at Troy weren't super elite either. They were good, and Troy was a good football team, but like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I think because of the relationship with Moore, it could be very successful, or at least more successful than we've had.
No pun intended.
Yeah. But let's go to a different Moore for mine. Moorhead. Joe Moorhead. I mean, the coach of Akron. Like, could the relationship from Penn State, he's had success. Some people think it could be very much a home run if Tech were able to get Joe Moorhead to come here.
And talk about a guy in a position that is no win. I don't think that's a winnable job at Akron, to be honest with you. And so you're clearly going to be able to pay him more. He's going to have less of a workload. He's going to be at a place that's much, much better for any level of success. I don't think that comes without question. So both of those names, those were the first two names I wrote down.
Okay.
And I think Neil Brown is the one that would be, on the surface level, the most seamless transition, because from an X's and O's standpoint, I think schematically you have to build from the offensive line out. Like, you have to understand all the ins and outs of what the offensive line does before you can figure out, what kind of route trees am I going to run? How are my running backs going to pass pro? What are my check downs? All that stuff. It starts offensive line. I think that relationship with Coach Moore makes the most sense. And then Moorhead, again, like getting a guy who has been at the head of a program and making those in-game decisions, like when do I use timeouts? When do I go hurry up? When do I chew clock? Stuff like that. I think that would be a really good win for this staff.
Who do you got, Sam?
Yeah. Ricky Ronnie. Absolute kill shot to the ODU program. Poach him from right here across the river.
It's not a bad
bring
idea.
him in. He is getting paid $846,000 this year. We can pay him a whole lot more than that. And in all seriousness, very inventive offense, an offense that has been successful with very little talent in a very good league. And I would also say great relationship guy with currently on staff. I think that is huge. But maybe the biggest and most important thing of bringing Ricky Ronnie is I think he is someone who has hit his ceiling at ODU. They can't recruit. There's not a huge financial buy-in. They are, clearly the fourth best program in the state, clearly the fourth best. And so I think the sell of current sitting head coach, bringing him into offensive coordinator, it sounds ridiculous, but it's not that far-fetched considering the situation he is in. So
and that would bring some fight to the locker room. That dude seems like a psycho. Like,
he
in a good
has
way.
he has a little bit of like bang your head against a locker to him that I don't personally see from anybody on this coaching staff right now.
Yeah, would certainly. I have to think about it a little bit more.
He's also making less there than he could make at Virginia Tech, right, Sam?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
He is. Again, I have a hard time wrapping my head around moving into a position, moving from a head coaching position to a coordinator position to a school that, I would assume that Ricky Ronnie's leash is longer at ODU than what Coach Pry's current leash is at Virginia Tech. Not to get into like a leash conversation, but look, we're just being real about it.
Yeah.
So I like that name. And I also like that he has the relationship with Coach Pry. I'm going to throw out Aaron Moorhead. Again, people are going to throw out, well, he's never been an offensive coordinator. Well, I need more experience. Familiar with Blacksburg, been here. Isaiah Ford, Cam Phillips in the NFL right now, has a chance to win a Super Bowl on Sunday. I just have a really
anyone
hard time.
Who's familiar with his time at Virginia Tech,
it was great.
He was a stud. Like he had all the makings of being, someone you earmark as like, that guy's going to be a coach someday, like a head coach or a coordinator or something. I don't know. Go ahead,
Pete.
No, I of course I would worry about the play calling and stuff like that.
Sure.
That's a huge unknown and a huge risk when you're literally going for a guy doing it for the first time. So not saying I would hate it, but it would be a giant concern at this point.
I would argue it was already a giant concern. I mean, this is
fair enough.
Good counter.
and I thought in terms of like Pete, I think you asked me this question, like, what would be the ideal offense for Virginia Tech to run? That was in one of the podcasts. And I was like, dude, I think it's something pretty darn close to what we run. Like a lot of motion, a lot of smoke and mirrors, try to scheme guys open. Our issue was our game plan sucked and our play calling was questionable at best.
Well, also it felt, this has been much discussed on both of our shows. It just seemed like we were trying to make Kyron look like Andrew Luck. A lot of 5-step drop, a lot of basically what we didn't see success from in 2023, almost being force fed into 2024. Not to mention it's hard to do a 5-step drop when you're not picking up 4 down linemen that are rushing at you. So
we just made everything too complicated. It was always, we're trying to not take the easy thing to do. And I just felt like with what our strengths were, we didn't play into them nearly enough. And that's going to be so big for whoever we do hire, is like, can he identify what this team is good at early in the season and put it into place? Because that's something we struggled with every year with Bowen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Sam, I know you have some like Mountain West, like crazy pulls here. I just wrote down Billy Kosh. I know nothing about Billy Kosh. I know Robert Irving was fired up about him. He's at Stony Brook. So why don't you, I'm going to call this Sam's Corner, because I know you're going to have a bunch of names that you're familiar with that I'm not.
I mean, the issue here is who is willing to make that move at this point in the year? Like, who's willing to leave their team?
We can't go get Brennan Marion, who was the offense coordinator at UNLV, because now he's the head coach at Sacramento State. That's where the timing thing is coming into play, right, Sam?
Yeah, and that's one of the issues. He would have been the name that would have been the clear, let's go get this guy.
Go offense.
The go offense, man. That'd be fun. I think you have a very limited pool here. I think you have to have somebody with prior relationships with this staff and people who are currently on the offensive staff, because you're not going to make wholesale changes to the coaching staff. You're going to keep most of your guys. So I think you need somebody who, one, you can give a significant pay raise to, 2, is going to be comfortable jumping into a role where they don't get to bring over all of their guys, and 3, who is in a position where, you know, they're not building a program up right now. Like that's something that the Mountain West and stuff, for a lot of those programs, Boise State obviously made the playoff, but with like Utah State, where we saw Bronco Mendenhall just took that job and brought over a lot of guys there. Like, they think there is a path for them to make the playoff. With a guy like Ricky Ronnie at ODU, like, I don't really think that path exists. And that's why I think it's much more likely to get somebody from one of the bottom tier Sun Belt or somebody from the FCS, where you don't have this, light at the end of the tunnel, like some of the Mountain West schools or some of the American schools have, like Tulane, Memphis, etc.
Well, realistically though, I mean, I think for a lot of coaches, they're probably not thinking, can I win a playoff bid here? Can I win a conference championship? For a lot of them, let's just call it what it is. For a lot of coaches, they're at a job because they know if they win at that job, they'll end up having a job at the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the ACC.
Yeah.
So yes, the Memphises, the Tulanes, the Boise States, they're in a little bit of a different situation, but I don't think, with all due respect to ODU and Ricky Ronnie, I don't think any of those schools are thinking about, well, if we go undefeated, we might make the playoff.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I mean, we've beaten this into the ground. It's going to be a small pool.
Yeah.
And
well, can I go to a way to make that pool very small?
Sure.
Internal hires. There's 2 options in my head that could be possible. One would be Fontel Mines. He's someone that they absolutely love, recruited his butt off. Would he get the promotion to OC? That's one. And the other one would be Brent Davis, who is still on staff and maybe even potentially redundant now with Matt Moore there. I don't really know how they're shaking all that stuff out.
I'm glad you brought this up. I want to say this on Brent Davis's behalf. When fans get mad, they just pick somebody to be like, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. How much does he make? He is not that smart. I actually have no idea about Brent Davis. If we hired Brent Davis, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be fired up. But the comp that I had this written down before. A lot of people were like, who's this Adam Lechtenberg guy? Like, who is this guy? I don't know what he is. Does he suck? Like, he has to suck, right? He is the head coach. Yeah, he's the head coach at, I believe, Central Connecticut State, who just won their conference this past year. So it's very easy for somebody to look at somebody's like Hokie Sports page and be like, well, this guy must suck because we're paying him this amount of money. So I don't know what a Brent Davis offensive coordinated offense would look like.
The triple.
I think people.
You wanted inventive, Billy Ray.
Yeah,
you need something different.
I think that we are going to expect. You know what else is interesting? Is that it doesn't seem, at least I haven't seen it because this news is so new. We haven't seen like the typical rounds of let's keep it in the family. Can we get Michael Vick to come coach the offense? Can we get such and such to come coach the offense? Again, I don't care who it is. I just care that our offense looks better in September or whatever day we play South Carolina than it does this upcoming year. So those are all of the names that I have. And it's kind of crazy that we're talking about this because, Sam, to your point, there are probably coaches right now who just hung up with Coach Pry or Witt or somebody, and they're like, man, do I make that jump? Like, what does that jump look like? And I think for some people, they're probably looking at this move, not thinking about the football season at all, not thinking about next year at all. There are probably some people that are thinking, where does Virginia Tech sit in the ultimate pecking order of college football right now? I think some people are probably thinking about it along those terms. And I think it's an unanswerable question again. I think you have to lump in together. Virginia Tech is in the ACC. Virginia Tech is in a position where you're on the doorstep of a lot of changes happening if things don't go the right way. So it's an interesting thing to look at.
I think an area that you attack potentially, if you think Pry is on the hot seat, who else is on the hot seat out there in college football? You look at those jobs and you say, is there an offensive coordinator worth poaching from those jobs? And that might find more stability or more money at Virginia Tech.
Pete, real quick, did you mention internal hires? You said Brent Davis and who else? Who was your second person?
Fontel Mines.
Okay, I was going to say there's a case to be made for Fontel Mines. Again, no experience calling plays, but yeah, those are your two options.
Yeah. I mean, there's guys, I have no idea what they're going to do. I'm going to be straight up. Like this is weird.
How long do you think that Brent Pry knew that this could happen? Like, I'm wondering how long ago he heard the news from Bowen saying like, listen, I just got an offer that I can't refuse and I got to go. Like, did it happen yesterday? Did it happen 2 weeks ago? Like, I'm so curious to know that, because if it happened in the midst of all the DC stuff, maybe we already know who our guy is.
I have no insider information on this. I would be shocked if he knew more than 24 hours in advance.
Of today?
Of when it happened. Yeah. I would be shocked. Just at how quick all this stuff happens.
I feel like he would have had to know before 24 hours. Like I feel like I think Bowen would have done him a solid on that.
You know, if they're fielding calls. Like,
how long ago did the Fry thing happen?
I want to say 4 days. Okay. I'm not 100% sure.
So that would probably be the max, right? Like,
yeah. And I'd also say, like, you have those conversations during the off season and you talk about, hey, like, are you 100% committed to this job? Right. If you're not, then we'll move somewhere else. Guys are going to get calls. I don't think if you're Brent Pry, I think you always have to have a list, kind of is my point. I started that bad, but you always have to have a list So in
Sure,
terms
but
of like how
I
early
don't.
did he know this? Did he have guys call like no, but like he probably has like a in case break glass in case of emergency if he leaves, like who's my call list? You
Yeah,
have those guys. ADs talk
maybe,
about that all the time.
maybe. Again, unanswerable question. I don't think I don't think that that any coach would voluntarily say, I'm committed to the job right now, but if somebody calls,
Which
just
is
to let
like
you
a
know.
Michael Scott. I will 100% be there unless something else pops up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
going to be honest. Like that's kind of how it's college football feels
Mhm.
as a sport. Like I'm
Yeah.
committed. I am 110% committed until I'm not.
Can we take just one big picture look at the position changes that are going to take place, or I should say coaching changes that are going to take place? We've already hired strength and conditioning. Do you guys view, and we don't know, but like in your opinion, do you feel that that's an upgrade to bring in Jared Ferguson over what we had before? I
have a
know a
hard
lot of
time
people
I have a
closer.
hard time not being biased. I think that it was, I mentioned this in October. I think strength and conditioning wasn't a difference maker. It was a difference maker in the negative way. Like
You were
I
on it
think
all year.
I think it was a serious problem that dated back to last year. And last year we were in a position to where we played ourselves into shape and finished the year strong. This year we were not in shape when we got on the field, and then we got hurt on the back half of the year. So
Plus
uh,
upgrade.
yes,
Okay.
sure,
It
Sam,
has to be.
upgrade.
It
Okay.
has to be.
O line upgraded at coach.
absolutely,
100,000%.
All right. DC, do you believe it's an upgrade, Sam, over Marv?
Schematically, I would say yes.
And it's impossible to know because
It's
he has,
impossible to know the
but he
other
was
stuff 'cause
very
he's
good
never
at the
done it.
college level at Wofford and has nothing but glowing recommendations and right up the food chain in terms of being a
Yeah.
football coach since then. So I'm gonna say DC seems like an upgrade right now.
DC seems like an upgrade. And what I would also say, and it's unfair is the wrong term, but you have to keep in mind the DC stepped in a position to where while he was being interviewed, we were actually, I wouldn't go as far as to say improving our roster on defense, because you have to go out and you have to replace Mansour Delaney, you have to replace Aeneas Peoples, you have to replace Dorian Strong and a
APR.
plethora of other players. But we were able to go out and sign guys that are going to be difference makers for us while that was in flight. With this offensive coordinator situation, we're not able to sign anybody. You might lose some guys, but at the same standpoint, you may be able to go out and get some guys that fit the scheme better. So it's a different situation. I would say TBD, but it's unfair to say TBD because it was an untenable situation to go into next year with the same play caller.
At DC, you're saying.
Sure. So we'll go plus minus. We'll go
Yeah.
TBD.
And so with OC, and this is literally TBD because it hasn't been hired yet. We brought everybody back. Everybody. 71st in yards per play, 67th in scoring offense. People were like, oh, we scored 30 points a game. 67th in scoring offense.
So did everybody else.
And so I cannot imagine that the OC hire, whether or not the numbers are better on the field, I cannot imagine he will be worse than Tyler Bowen.
Yeah.
So let's just call it a push. That's a plus, and a push.
I'm gonna
okay.
I'm gonna respectfully withhold saying it's a push because again, and I know I expect this to be 20 minutes. We're 50 minutes in, but it's a good conversation. I would say that the offense, of course, you can point to some schematical things that were disappointing. I do want to give Tyler Bowen credit for the way that he recruited and in some ways the way that he maximized specific position groups in specific games. I think the thing that was the most frustrating is you have performances like you have against Syracuse at home, UVA on the road, and you have this awesome explosion of offense. And then you have situations like the Clemson game, or you have situations, and Minnesota's not fair, but you have some of these other games that you throw in there. So I'm going to withhold judgment because I think the offensive there's so many things you can point to offense. The lack of development under wide receiver, the lack of consistency at wide receiver, the lack of depth at running back, the injury at running back, the lack of good play up front in the offensive line room.
Yeah, but Bowen is an offensive line guy, and he was the QB coach.
Yeah.
Like the whole offense, like it really falls on his shoulders, and it was extremely mediocre to bad for 3 years. So
Yeah,
I am comfortable saying it's going to be a push with whoever we get.
Okay.
I think Sam could be the new hire. It might be a push.
I think they're going to have to bring in some sort of quarterback specialist, whether that guy is the OC himself or is a total new coaching position. I don't think there's anybody on this staff that you would want coaching your quarterbacks.
I say this in
And
jest.
the guy could bring that with him, right? Like we were saying, oh, he already has his guys. Well, that's an open position that the new guy could.
Yes. Yes.
I say this,
or it could be him. We could hire a guy with QB expertise.
I say this in jest, but also pretty serious. I'd love to get a guy that can coach the offense who's also got like a minor in clock management. I would love that too. So if we can add that to the job description, I think that
Ricky Ronnie, a whole lot of experience in one score games. Not the best record, but a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So to sum up, Bill, you do not believe the sky to be falling because of the timing and because of this happening today.
No, I don't believe the sky is falling. I think I step away from this saying Ohio State gets whoever they want whenever they want. They're one of those schools. That's the situation they're in. I step away saying I didn't feel great about our coordinator situation in October. And I think most people were saying, I hope we get 2 new coordinators. But I am going to wait and see because my stance is that it is a very limited pool that you are pulling from right now. That's how I feel about it.
And if they all say no, then it's a problem.
They all say no, it's a problem. Yeah. And I really hope that there is no further attrition, not of our own doing from this coaching staff. The key is getting somebody in as quickly as possible. If you are a Virginia Tech coach on social media, just turn it off. There's some account. If you want the accounts to block, I will message them over to you to get them out because there's probably going to be a lot of negativity around the hire. I would encourage people, whoever we do hire, you can look at the resume, you can watch the film, you can do whatever. There's no reason to judge the hire until we see what it looks like. Because again, Sifkeys could be Paul Bear Bryant. I have no idea. But for me, I want to get somebody in here who, speaking to Coach Moore, this guy's seen a lot of football, and Coach Sifkeys, for as young as he is and inexperienced as he is in that specific role, he's seen a ton of football. He's learned a ton of football from a bunch of guys who know what they're doing. That's what I would like to see in this position when we take this swing. So the rest of it's basically unanswerable questions.
Well, good news for us because we were about to run out of content until spring ball, but now
yeah, we got a whole new thing.
There's always something to talk about, brother.
I'll tell you.
There's always something to talk about. I guess just for fun, I was going to do this at the top of our Coach Moore interview, and it didn't seem appropriate then. It doesn't seem appropriate now, but I do just want to say it. Coach Young went on ACC Network the other night, and I think if you haven't seen his comments, look it up. He basically, without saying it, said that he's in it for the long haul at Virginia Tech. There was a lot of speculation out there saying that there's a potential he could retire. He could be the next coach to throw his hands up and say that he doesn't want any of it. I just want to commend both basketball programs. I think our expectation stepping into this winter was, okay, George Amore's gone, Kitley's gone, Coach Brooks is gone. Our men's basketball team was completely gutted. They're both going to suck. Well, Megan Duffy is probably the odds-on favorite to win Coach of the Year in the ACC. She has done an absolutely incredible job. And our men's basketball team, by every metric, I was talking to Ed this morning, they realistically could win 1 or 2 of their ACC games for the rest of the year and still make the tournament. It was like a foregone conclusion that
the ACC tournament, yes.
The ACC tournament, excuse me,
yes.
That Mike Young was going to miss the ACC tournament. I have had a lot of fun watching these teams. I think the NIL situation will be better with it. I actually know the NIL situation with men's basketball will be tremendously better next year. I think they do deserve some credit. They were going to get talked about. It's just so much has happened in football. They kind of haven't been talked about.
And for women's, the recruiting has been incredible.
Yeah. It's been awesome.
I mean, they're recruiting at a really, really high level. So, I mean,
Mike Young with those comments, Bill, he essentially said, I ain't no quitter.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of coaches this year decide, I'm going to hang it up. I'm going to be soft. I'm going to quit. I don't like this NIL. It's too hard. Mike Young said, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna X and O you guys to death until I can't do it anymore. Real quick before we sign off, anything else that we wanted to talk about? Just while we're here.
I think my last thing on the losing Bowen is just that the Kyron Drones thing is interesting here because Bowen went down to Texas and got him. In all anything I can guess, like he had to convince him to stay when the pop stuff started and whatever else. Like, I don't really know, but this is if you're Kyron Drones today, this is probably a pretty big blow, and it shouldn't be underestimated or taken for granted that he's just going to stick around because the coach he came here for is leaving, despite what I think about that coach. Like, I know that they had a lot of faith in him, Kyron and his family. So from that perspective, it does leave a lot unknown. But as I said before, at the very least, Pry and the staff as a whole are tremendous recruiters, and they do a really good job at recruiting their own guys to stay in Blacksburg.
Yeah. Whoa. Anybody want to place just a receipt on how long this is going to take?
It is currently 6:13 p.m. on Wednesday, February 5th. I'm going to say we have a news drop from Pete Thamel at...
Wait, now?
He's even saying the name of the reporter who's going to report it. I like it.
It's going to be Thamel. I'm going to say on February 20th.
Oh, my God.
At February 20th at 3:47 p.m.
I'm just going to say a week from today.
I was going to say next Wednesday.
A week? You guys think they're going to move that quickly?
Sam, we have to go to practice. We have to put pads on and go practice.
I think it's a week or less. I think we can know by Friday. I mean,
they as in Virginia Tech not only need to teach the kids what the scheme is. This offensive coordinator is going to have to come in and tell the coaches what offense we're going to run.
I hope you're right. I mean, you think shorter than 2 weeks?
Valentine's Day at the latest.
I certainly hope so, Sam.
Dude, that's
I'm really exercising a lot of qualities that I haven't had in my life, especially in other areas, and patience. If it is you said the 23rd,
the 20th,
that's
next Thursday.
15 days.
2:30.
We would be having emergency podcasts from the 15th on to the 20th about I'll tell you this,
because there's no more football happening now. That's the difference between the DC thing and
unless it is. I think the only way it is that quick, like pre-Valentine's Day, is if it is somebody who is like best boys with Pry, and Pry just picked up the phone and was like,
he's got a bunch of friends, man. He's a likable guy. I'm sure.
I think that's the only scenario. Like, I don't think outside of the family, quote unquote, guy is going to make a decision that quickly. It's going to, like, I keep going back to like Ricky Ronnie. I think Neil Brown is another guy who, like, those top of the list guys who have established relationships who would say yes on the phone. Because the amount of like contract work you have to get with, you have to interview these guys, you have to write up the contracts, you have to like do all that stuff. It takes time.
I think of all the guys we talked about today, like if we get Moorhead, like sign me up tomorrow. Neil Brown, I'd be fine with, but I think Ronnie is my number 2. Like something about getting Ricky Ronnie on our side. I kind of like. I'd have to do a deeper dive on his numbers.
It would be
and
a massive middle finger to ODU.
Can I just say, I'm so glad you said that again. I don't want to be in a position where we're like running victory laps around ODU. Like, if we wanted ODU's coach, we shouldn't be fired up that we're like, yeah, take that ODU.
No, I just think he could bring some. Yeah, I mean, it's a sidebar. It's a side.
Sure.
It would be juicy.
quest.
Sure.
It would be juicy.
It would be juicy. I'd love a personality too. A personality would be great. But man, we went an hour and 4 minutes on an emergency podcast. Pete, last thing, how are you feeling about you got a superb Sunday coming up. How are you feeling about it?
I feel good. Heading to the bar on Sunday morning early.
Yeah, you are.
Buddies from DC, Richmond, old Virginia Tech buddies are coming in, staying overnight at my house. We're gonna do the whole Uber in and out. Like we're making
Is
a whole
Baggett
thing
going?
Mason's not gonna make it. He's busy. He's busy. But I'm hoping like I will without a doubt be contacting Mason to get him on the show. Once he gets a feel for like what our guys look like in the weight room, have him on to see what he thinks about his first few months at Tech. I will be putting the feelers out for that. But
Heck yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped about the Super Bowl. You know, I saw this thing about Jalen Hurts getting back to the Super Bowl after losing one. Like no QB since like 1970 something has gotten back to the Super Bowl and won, or let alone even got back to it. Like if you look at the last like 20 Super Bowl losers, like those quarterbacks don't get back to the Super Bowl. So he's already like exceeded it. I feel like we're the better team, but I felt like we were the better team 2 years ago. When you're going up against Mahomes and Andy Reid, like it's going to be a massive challenge. So I'm nervous. I don't want to be responsible for giving the Chiefs the three-peat and 2 out of 3 of those Super Bowls, but we'll see what happens.
I'm rooting for the Eagles. Sam?
I'm rooting for the Eagles. I think it's going to be a really, really tough task, but fly, Eagles, fly.
I've been putting out Hokies who were Eagles on my feed all week, so stay tuned. I may put out a Chief or 2 as well, but mostly it's going to be Eagles, and I've got some good ones coming.
Yeah. Well, everybody, please, I know this will probably be on both feeds, I'm assuming, but do check out Too Deep. Do check out Sons of Saturday. Appreciate you guys jumping on, and when we have a coordinator, we will all reconvene when necessary and applicable.
That sounds good, man.
All right. You know what, Sam? One thing, if we get to the 19th and we don't have a coordinator, I'd love to figure out some sort of game that we need to do. Maybe if we get to the 12th, we'll do like a 24
maybe so like a week. What about a week from today?
Is it like when people like circle the dates for the baby that's going to be born?
Yeah. You got to put we all got to put a stork out front with no face and say offensive coordinator Virginia Tech, please show up at my front door.
Yeah, awesome, I think if we get to the 12th, like if it's been 7 days in the PM and we haven't heard any news, then I think we can start brainstorming.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go like fast and
Aaron Moorhead will be available Monday.
I will not eat until then. But everybody, thanks for tuning in and chopping up with us, and we will be talking to you guys soon. Hopefully really soon.
Go Hokies.
Go Hokies.